One of our greatest existential fears as human beings is the fear of being alone. It is no secret anymore that we hate feeling extensively isolated from others. As social creatures, we are programmed to thrive further within a tribe of similar-minded individuals who share the same goals, beliefs, and values as us. Although it can be done, thriving alone is never and will never be our preferred path toward prosperity. If there is any chance or possibility to undergo our respective journeys alongside someone or a group of people who share the same objectives as us, we will always opt for that option in a heartbeat. And in no other moments or circumstances in our lives do we need the presence of those individuals the most than when we are in our most vulnerable state. The last thing that we want on our wish list is not having anyone to share our most vulnerable moments with, or worse, being ridiculed, abused, and violated for showcasing our vulnerabilities. It makes us feel no longer isolated but worse, as complete outcasts. Most of us have this naive perspective that as fellow empaths, people will always be willing to spare their time to entertain us and our miseries. But as we all know, the bitter truth is that most people simply don't care. They'll either ignore you or distance themselves from you, eventually, all because of the contagious or infective effect that negativity brings. What makes it all more painful is that it isn't their fault to begin with. With this dire acknowledgement in mind, we then proceed to hide our sufferings in plain sight, in the fear of being judged and violated. We wear masks to cover our desperate desires and pleas to convey our thoughts and feelings. We secretly pray for someone to witness the subtle leaks of our sickness and be content or willing to hear our side of the story. We hopelessly yearn for relatable people who share the same pain as us, so that we don't feel like the only freak or reject in this world. Because as we all know by now, misery always seeks and loves company. The unfortunate and uncomfortable reality that we all must learn to accept is that most of us physically will have to face the unfair consequence of having to be alone in dealing with our battles. Like I've said a million times before, no matter how weak and vulnerable you feel, it is the wisest and most objective decision to carefully select and decide who and where you are revealing them to. As all of us are aware by this point, we are living in a power-evolving universe where any form of weakness will likely be abused for selfish gains, malicious intentions, and profit. Most of the time, you won't be in the optimal or favorable position to share your vulnerabilities, and thus you will be left on your own to eventually patch your wounds. That is why you need to be strong, endure the wild waves, and not let your weaknesses dictate the narrative of your thoughts and actions. The worst thing you can do for yourself is to remain passively miserable and refuse to put in any time and effort to drag yourself out of that deep, dark hole that you are in. In our minds, we often tell ourselves that it is okay to be weak and vulnerable, even society says so. But what reality says is, weak or strong, we don't care. Just deal with whatever we present in front of you. If you want to be weak and vulnerable, go ahead, be weak and vulnerable. Let's just see how well you can deal with everything that we have in store for you. Although this might be a rude and rather dark awakening for some of you, a glimmer of pleasant reality still manages to slip through the darkness. That is, although we are physically alone in fighting our own battles, narratively and universally, we are never alone. Why? Because millions are also currently fighting the same battles as you, regardless of who they are, where they come from, or where they are located in this harsh world. Heartbreaks, betrayals, worthlessness, aimlessness, and even loneliness. There are so many others who are also suffering the same circumstances as you, and some of them even worse. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is have the courage and confidence to share your pain. Try sharing them right here in this safe space for fellow strugglers, because that is what they've secretly been waiting for all this time, just a voice. A familiar voice that speaks to them and represents what they're dealing with. A voice of salvation that will make them realize that they are not the only one in this world who has to endure or are enduring all the atrocities that life has bestowed upon them. A voice of soothing comfort and company amid a seemingly endless torture. A voice that feels us and cares about us, and most importantly, a voice of inspiration to be courageous enough to endure and eventually be victorious in our battles. Because although we are physically on our own, all of us are technically in this together, always.